Sijusmasi. Buenas and Hafaday. This public hearing is now called to order, and the time now is 2 p.m., Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. This hearing is conducted by myself, Senadora Telo Taitague, Chairwoman on the Committee on Economic Investment, Military Buildup, Regional Relations, Technology, Regulatory Affairs, Justice, Election, and Retirement. To comply with the open government law, notices of this hearing was published on KUAM and the Government of Guam public notice portal on Tuesday, October 28, 2025, and the second notice on Saturday, November 1st, 2025. The notice of this hearing was also disseminated to all senators and the media via email and is made available on the Guam Legislature's website. I would like to recognize those who are here in person. The Department of Labor is here as well. Thank you so much for being here. And welcome to the People's House. Okay. I would like to also mention to any colleagues who come in that I've provided all my colleagues a copy of the legislation and documents received ahead of this hearing, which can be accessed through the Google Drive link, which is published on the public hearing notices for the hearing and also emailed to you in advance, or to the senators in advance. And for the listening public, you can access the Google Drive link on the public hearing notices published on the Government of Guam public notice portal at notices.guam.gov. Again, that's notices.guam.gov, or on the Guam Legislative website at guamlegislature.gov. If you need assistance, please feel free to call the legislature at 671-472-3465. The rules before I begin, I would like to set some of them as we engage in this public hearing. When you speak, please make sure you speak directly into the microphone. And for the record, please state your name, your position, and who you represent. I ask that those who are testifying today to please stay seated for any questions my colleagues or I have, and then you'll be excused. I respectfully ask that we conduct ourselves professionally and respect each other's opinion, no pulling hair, no biting. Those individuals who do not comply to these rules will be removed from the room and prohibited from further participation. So on the agenda this morning, the bill on the agenda for discussion is Bill number 21038, COR, introduced by myself, Telo T. Taitague, an act to add a new Article 3 to Division 1, Chapter 6, Title 17 of the Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations relative to the Department of Labor promulgation of rules and regulations for the implementation and enforcement of Public Law 36-118, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. We received a fiscal note from BBMR, and BBMR issued a fiscal note on the bill with the following comments. It says, based on comments received, the Department of Labor makes reference to its preliminary cost impact assessed dated May 14th, 2022, which notes a maximum positive impact of $36,000 to the department. Additionally, the Guam Department of Labor has determined its personal services cost impact at $47,422.02, which equates to the annual salary of 4 investigators needed, and based on the percentage of time targeted for the enforcement of the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act at 25%. The Department of Labor further determined that the additional workload will not require additional staff, but the department may need staff in future fiscal years should the occurrence of increased violations happen. As such, the Department of Labor is unable to project an estimated fiscal impact until the establishment of a historical baseline in the future years. Also noted that in Section 3804, small letter H, Chapter 3, Title 22, the Guam Code annotates specifies that any penalty fines for violation be collected by the Department of Labor and be deposited into the Manpower Development Fund to be employed exclusively for the training programs and enforcement operations within the Fair Employment Practice Office. The Bureau recommends that the identity and deposit of fines collected and deposited into the MDF be also included in Section 6305, penalties of the proposed administrative rule regulation for the Pregnant Workers Fair Act, and that was from BBMR. Also, I sent this to our legal counsel to review the proposed bill, and according to legal, they have reviewed it during its introduction, and at this time, we've heard no recommendations or changes or amendments to the bill. Invitations, public hearing invitations were sent to the following: the Office of the Attorney General, the Guam Bar Association, Catholic Social Services, the National Association of Social Workers, the Society of Human Resources Management, Guam Chapter, Pacific Human Resources, Okada Managing Consulting Services, Allied Human Services, the Guam Bureau of Women's Affairs, for Malawian Rights, Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, Catholic Social Services, and the Chukis Women's Association, Guam Association, and the Guam Women's Club. So we did our due diligence to reach out to the community and ensure that this is having a public hearing, and if they would like to testify, they can be here. So at this time, I'd like to do the opening of the bill and then ask for your testimonies right after. So that being said, Hafaday colleagues, well, Hafaday everyone who's listening today and members of the public, thank you for joining this public hearing today. I introduced Bill 210-38 on behalf of the Guam Department of Labor and also want to thank my colleague, Senator PEREZ, for co-sponsoring this bill. Bill 210-38 aims to formally codify into the Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations the procedures needed to implement and enforce the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, also known as Public Law 38-118. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act in 2022 landmarked legislation enacted to eliminate workplace discrimination and ensure reasonable accommodations for workers whose ability to perform job functions is limited by pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions. Bill 21038, COR, outlines how the Guam Department of Labor will enforce these landmark rules and regulations by, 1, establishing clear definitions of terms such as, quote, reasonable accommodations, known limitations, and employer for consistent enforcement. Second, laid out a complaint process allowing employees to file with the Department of Labor's Fair Employment Practice Division with provisions for extensions due to medical reasons. 3, authorizing Department of Labor to conduct inspections and investigations, request employer records, and coordinate with federal agencies where necessary. 4th, requiring conspicuous posting of workers' rights in workplaces and impose civil penalties for non-compliance. Also providing a structural appeals process, administrative procedure, and civil remedies to ensure employees can seek relief for violation. Also, lastly, allowing petitions for the creation of modification of rules and requires Department of Labor to respond within 60 days. Though we passed the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act in 2022, the Department of Labor has been able to enforce it because the rules and regulations were not finalized until now. With Bill 21038, we have the means to follow through on our commitment to supporting working mothers and families and ensuring that they are treated with dignity and fairness and in the workplace. I ask my colleagues for their support of this bill, which will grant the Guam Department of Labor the full framework and authority to enforce the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. I'm sorry that was a bit long-winded. I wouldn't have read it through if I knew there were more people here, but I'm pretty sure you're probably going to say the same thing on it. And at this time, I'd like to recognize the Director of Department of Labor, Director David De La Sola. Welcome. Also, Jeff Sablon. Welcome, DOC. And then Siren Suarez from Department of Labor. Buenas and hafa adai, and thank you for being here. So, Mr. Director, I will yield to you for your opening remarks and testimony. Please state your name for the record, too, as well. Thank you. Oh, and I'd also like to recognize as well, thank you so much, Janella, for being here, too, as well. And all the information and data you're putting out there, very transparent. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hafa adai, David De La Sola, the Director for Department of Labor. Honorable Telo, Taitague, Chairperson for Committee on Economic Investment, Military Buildup, Regional Relations, Technology, Regulatory Affairs, Justice, Elections, and Retirement. Hafa adai, Senator Taitague. Thank you for holding this public hearing on the proposed rules for Public Law 36-118, the Pregnant Worker Fairness Act, PWFA. We would like to take this opportunity to recognize you as our Oversight Chair and for the quick scheduling of this hearing. We would also like to extend our appreciation to Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes for authorizing the PWFA, which will help many individuals in the future. After the passage of PWFA, we immediately began work on these rules, as well as the development of public awareness materials, including posters, outreach initiatives, and labor clinics to educate Guam's businesses and government communities. On November 20th, 2023, the Guam Department of Labor held a public hearing to receive input from general public prior to the finalization of the draft administrative rules. However, no one was in attendance and no written testimony was received. On December 6, 2023, we submitted the draft rules for review in accordance with the administrative adjudication process to the Attorney General's office. On August 21st, 2025, we received feedback from the Attorney General's office approving our draft. After making minor amendments to the draft, we subsequently submitted the agency record for review to the Governor's office on September 2nd, 2025, and received approval on September 11th, 2025. Guam DOL has completed all the prerequisite mandates in the promulgation process and has properly submitted our record to the legislature for action. We believe that the draft rules are sufficient to enable the fair and equitable implementation of the PWFA statute for both employers and pregnant workers who may need accommodation while they work through the often difficult period of pregnancy and childbirth. However, to properly adopt the rules and regulation as promulgated by GDOL, rather than amending the administrative rules and regulations, we recommend the bill be revised to state, quote, "A legislaturan Guahan hereby adopts the rules and regulations as promulgated by the Guam Department of Labor pursuant to Section 3806 of Chapter 3, Title 22, Guam Code annotated and attached as Exhibit A. Such adopted rules and regulations may be amended hereafter in accordance to the administrative adjudication law," unquote. We are eager to begin this very worthwhile program and respectfully request that the legislature consider expediting the consideration of this bill and the recommended language so that we can finally launch this initiative and extend full benefits to Guam's pregnant workers and their families. Once again, Si Diyos Masi for the opportunity to testify, and we stand ready to answer any questions you or the panel may have. Thank you. Sincerely, Dave De La Sola.
Thank you so much, Director. And anybody want to say anything, or please feel free. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon.
Taitague and Senator Sheila Kavu. My name is Jeff Sablan. I'm the Fair Employment Practice Officer with the Guam Department of Labor Fair Employment Division. Yes, I just like to say thank you for pushing this forward and having us do our due diligence in terms of making sure that we go out there and exercise and execute this vital act for all pregnant women working on island, and to ensure that they have sound protections in terms of our jurisdiction. Basically, I'm in favor of this bill. That's our job in our division, and I'm just looking for a positive passage of this bill.
Thank you, Mrs. Blan. Thank you. Did you want to say? Okay. So I'd also like to recognize my colleague, Senator Shelley Calvo. Thank you so much, Senator, for being here. I do have a couple questions to ask, especially to you, Mr. Sablan, since you're overseeing that in the department. Is there federal law already governing the Pregnancy Fairness Act in place right now federally, on a federal level? And do you follow those guidelines?
Yes. At this moment, there is federal legislation mandates out there. On Guam, this is a local mandate that we're doing different from the federal side. We do have a partnership with our federal counterparts, and we do exercise the protection of pregnant women working in the workforce. Based on that collaboration with our federal counterparts, we've been having very successful investigations in the past years prior to the PWFA being passed. And, we've been very fortunate to hear that this is a local legislation that is now going to be enforced locally in Guam. So we have the best of both worlds in particular, and we're very happy that we have one locally to move forward with the guidance and help with our federal counterparts as well.
Right. That's good to know, because, it took a while for this bill to actually become law. And the thought of, not being able to provide, the protections of those women who are pregnant, or even, it was disheartening. But knowing that there is a federal law currently in place in which we have to follow it as well, it's good to know. And I do realize that there are other jurisdictions that actually have heavier penalties than the federal law. Like Puerto Rico is one of them. I believe there might be, CNMI has their own, American Samoa, but Puerto Rico being, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico being one of the more stricter laws that have been put in place. So Guam is moving in that same direction, but there's some areas that I have to ask you that I noticed was not incorporated, and that maybe to get your feedback, if I can, regarding individuals, or let's say workers, who have adopted a newborn, for instance, or a child under the age of 5. Could these workers also qualify for some workplace accommodations, such as, moderate working schedule conditions, time off, paid off, for adopting children, especially with medical or issues that they have for their newborn? How do we deal with that when there's just somebody having a newborn child that's adopted?
Okay, that's a good question, Senator. To my understanding, with the PWFA, that's dependent on the state jurisdiction based on their promulgated rules and how they govern. I don't see any issues with Guam adopting that particular rule. It's not stated in our current mandate or legislation. So if that's something that we can revisit down the road, I think that's something that can be enforced. But at this point, it's clear. It's clear in how the law states. But that's something I could also get guidance from our federal counterpart as far as the adoption of a child. Does that cover the umbrella of PWFA across and can be implemented and enforced locally as well because of the language that we have in place.
So you have no objections if we make an amendment to this to incorporate, those who are adopting children or who have full guardianship over a baby or a child like that?
I have no objection.
Okay, that's good to hear. It might be during a markup meeting, make some incorporations. I also have another thing, and that's because we researched the other jurisdictions on this particular pregnant women workers scenario, and it is paid lactation break for up to 1 hour per workday, or either breastfeed or pump breast milk for up to 12 months for employee has returned from maternity leave, and that we didn't notice was in the recommendations. So how do you feel about that?
Okay, on that note, we covered that. We had our discussions, our powwow before we came here. That's another, I guess, mandate that we have locally under the Nanas and Dampagan Act, the Mother and Child Act. There is an existing act out there that protects women who are going to breastfeed, et cetera. That's something that we do have a jurisdiction, but I think it's under public health mandate. That's another act that is strictly under public health. But I think on the enforcement side, we have that jurisdiction as well.
You do have the jurisdiction to allow for that to happen if a mother needs to, store breast milk, or
if an employee wants to file a complaint, they could file it with us.
Okay, but if we put it in this bill, for the
then if you put it in this bill, it gives more enforcement and compliance capability to us, rather than to have public health be the first and foremost. They could come straight to us, and we could collaborate with public health and try to, mitigate it at whatever level.
Okay, that's good. I have a lot of friends who decide to go the natural way on feeding their children, so as well, I did myself. How about protections, specific protections for a pregnant worker's position and employment while on pregnancy or childbirth relate to leave? Oh, by the way, the lactation one, if you, the lactation break, you can look in that into Puerto Rico, so just a FYI. The open one is specific protections of the pregnant worker's position and employment while on pregnancy or childbirth-related leave. Okay. I'm just going to skip over that because I think we have that taken care of in the federal side. Also, consider a modified set of workplace accommodations for workers that have adopted, and we talked about the adopted and fostered of newborn and children under the age old. This is something that Puerto Rico also offered. Do you have any objections to consider a modified set of workplace accommodations for workers that, again, adopted or fostered children under that age when they're still babies?
At this time, I have no objections.
Okay.
That's something that we would need to review as far as the state of Puerto Rico conducts its enforcement on PWFA. Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of great things. Even check out Virgin Islands. U.S. Virgin Islands has some great ideas, as well as, CNMI, our brothers and sisters to the north. Okay, and the last thing I have is, based on your testimony regarding this section, however, to properly adopt the rules and regulations as promulgated by the Guam Department of Labor, rather than amending the administrative rules and regulations, we recommend the bill to be revised and stayed. Director, who provided you that recommendation?
That came from the from Adelup at the legal office.
Okay, that's
what I figured. Just a bit of
housekeeping. Yeah, okay, so what we have done is, because there is no exhibit, if you notice what you provided us, there was no exhibit. It has the definitions, it goes clearly, creates Article 3, which is next, and then from Article 2, and then it discusses all the definitions, And then it goes into what you can and cannot do. There are no exhibits in this legislation. That's why I'm kind of, scratching my head and what are they trying to mean by that? But rest assured, just to be on the safe side, we've contacted the compiler of law. I mean, they're the ones who really know, how to put this together more so than some attorneys. I mean, some attorneys have one way to think and another way to think. There's 50 gazillion excuses they can use to move forward on the right way or what's the wrong way or the right way. So rest assured, we will look into that, reach out to compiler of law. Other than that, I'd like to turn it over now to my good colleague, Senator Cowell. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, but I do wanted to let you know that I commend the intent of this bill, and I'd like to thank the panel for being here, for the testimonies that you offered. And I'm a woman, I'm a mother, so I do know that this is something that is beneficial to women, and setting a clear standard, reasonable accommodations for pregnancy, childbirth, and related issues is something that obviously I will support. As a woman and as oversight chair for Women's Affairs. So on that note, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to say a little remark, and thank you for your initiative and Senator Sabina's initiative over this bill. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Senator. And just to let you know that we did receive a testimony from the Bureau of Women's Affairs. So, of course, they stand in support of it and also make a reference. That's why I figured the area and how to put this in the Guam Code annotated was also referenced in the Bureau of Women's Affairs, so I kind of figured it came from Adelup. But we will do our due diligence on that to make sure. And then maybe during our markup meeting, we are going to make some changes of what we talked about. But please, feel free. This bill has not ended when receiving testimony, so if there's anyone who wants to provide testimony, please send it to my office. We'll continue to accept written testimony on today's hearing within 5 business days, and that means for you too as well. Feel free to provide any more different changes based on the public hearing we had today. Now, these testimonies can be mailed to my office at 238 Archbishop Flores Street, Suite 407 of the DNA Building in Hagåtña. You may also send your written testimony to my office via email at senatortelot@gmail.com. So that being said, thank you all for your participation in being here today. Create a great day. And the time now is 2:29, yes. Record time, 2:29. And this public hearing is now adjourned.